Panoptica, Cisco's cloud application security solution, provides continuous cloud application security, compliance, and monitoring at scale, giving customers deep visibility, risk evaluation with context, and actionable remediation insights to secure their entire inventory of cloud assets. Visit panoptica.app to learn more.
Hi, I'm Jonna Till-Johnson. I'm here today on Heavy Strategy with my colleague John Burke, who's the CTO at Nemertes, as well as our special guest, Fletcher Previn. Welcome, Fletcher.
Thank you for having me.
Fletcher has either what's the best job or the worst job in the whole world. He's the CIO at Cisco, which is sponsoring this episode. Many thanks to Cisco for bringing this to all of us in the Packet Pushers community. And Fletcher, again, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, so Heavy Strategy is the show about asking the right questions, not giving the right answers. Or maybe it's the show about snarking at each other about technology, that too. We've done some of that. So let's go ahead and get started asking some of those questions. Fletcher, when we talked about this show, one of the things that you really wanted to highlight was the challenge of building a philosophy of IT, having a philosophy of IT, and building an IT culture. You want to talk a little bit about what you've done at Cisco, at IBM to build an IT culture?
Yeah, sure. And as you mentioned, prior to being at Cisco, I was the CIO of IBM. And, I think IT is one of those very servant functions if you're doing it properly, right? Like our mission statement at Cisco in the IT department is to make it possible for everyone else at Cisco to do the best work of their lives. And we spend a lot of time thinking about technology as a driver of culture change and the idea that your culture is really the only unique thing that you have. Over time, people try to steal your technology. That's kind of just what happens. But it's pretty difficult to steal somebody's culture. And the shortest path to engaging people is what's in their hand or what's on the desk. And so how well we're doing our jobs in IT and having a strategy of leading with experience and engaging people and enabling them to operate in their power zone is not trivial. It's actually core to a strategy of creating a culture of high performance where talented people want to work and where we can attract and retain the best people. And so that's really everything we do in IT. One of the first changes I made was creating a function that reports directly to me for user experience and design. And going forward, anything that we create, whether it's an enterprise application, a mobile app, an email that's going to go out to a lot of people, or a sign that we're going to hang in the office, anything that a lot of people are going to see or experience, we make sure that it goes through that team and that team is embedded into the agile teams that are working on it from start to finish so that it comes out the other end looking like something from your consumer life. And so that's really our philosophy to how we think about IT is engineer from the experience in instead of the IT department out and optimize for the employee and the experience and not optimize for ourselves or cost.
So I want to ask you, though, I love everything you're saying. And of course, anyone that has an IT department certainly looks at that and says, that's great. I wish my IT department thought the way you did. But how do you balance that with IT being not only a business enabler, but actually at the forefront of what the organization should be doing? Because in a lot of respects, we're the ones that see the new technology even before, and this may not be the case at Cisco or at IBM, but it could still be that you're seeing stuff ahead of the curve and being able to come in and say, hey, we can change the way we do business if we apply new technology. How do you balance sort of being in that reactive, responsive mode with being that proactive and anticipatory engine?
IT serves versus IT leads. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the essential question, right? And that's something that we spend a lot of time making sure that we're really thinking about and trying to execute on, whether it's the current state of AI moving from DevOps to AI ops to no ops, or moving from chat bots and answer bots to agents that are doing things on your behalf. And what does the IT organization of the future really look like? And what are the right things to start to put in place now to be prepared for that? But at the end of the day, there is this evolution that has been going on for a couple of years of IT being a cost center that you wish you could not have or minimize to a really strategic partner to the business. And if we're doing our jobs well, then it's good news for the business when IT gets engaged and helps them deliver some capability, because it means it's going to be secure, it can scale, it's integrated. And that's really the reputation that we work hard to have, is clarity around what is the productive capacity of this team? How are our priorities being set? How is the work getting done? When is it going to be done? And so there's a sort of business relationship management component to that of, managing our own budget problems, not having scary audit findings, and doing what we said we were going to do when we said we were going to do it. And that tends to get the credibility we need with the business to do these larger, more complex, transformative things. But that's a sort of never-ending exercise, if you will.
Well, so what I'm hearing is, you want the business to take you seriously when you say, I'm from IT and I'm here to help you. But honestly, at Cisco, is that really how they feel? I mean, when you come in and say, yeah, I'm here to help you, are they looking at you like, yes, great, excellent? Or is it more, go away and stick to your knitting?
No, it really is a symbiotic, helpful relationship more than any other place I've worked. And that's not just because there's great people and smart people there, and when you spend time with smart people, good things happen. It's also because we really are customer zero, or maybe pre-customer zero, if you will. Cisco makes and sells all of the things that you need to build and manage a large enterprise. I am a large enterprise. So we have this very close relationship to the product teams within Cisco about, what are the features and capabilities that are going to work for us. That ultimately makes their products more competitive. And it's a lot better to hear those things from friendlies than out in the market when you're trying to sell it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I can see that there's a certain element of trusted advisorship that you get that not everybody actually gets, which comes back to, either the best job or the worst job in the world, depending on how you look at it.
It's the best job because it's never boring. It's always, if you like IT, and I do love IT, I chose to do this on purpose. I didn't just sort of get assigned here, right? This has been my career so far, and I love it because it's always interesting. It's always new. It's always difficult. You can never know everything. And you get to do things at a place that is part of inventing the future, like Cisco, that have never been done before. And so when you're customer zero, sometimes that means there are literally zero other people you can ask, how do I do this? How do I get help? But that's okay, because it's not actually my goal to just be competitive in the market. Our people should be on stage showing people things they've never seen before.
So,
go ahead, John.
I'm sorry. I want to dig in on this Cisco stack that you're running. I mean, are you literally running a Cisco first kind of technology stack where if Cisco makes it, that's what you're using?
Well, I'm going to split the answer to the question and say, yes, I am running a Cisco stack, but it is not just because I work there, right? So, sometimes you have these debates internally and say, is my job to make 100,000 people productive or to deploy Cisco products? You'd like those things to be the same thing, but that's an important analysis to do, because if you suboptimize, somewhere between 85 and 100,000 people, there's a huge cost to that. Now, I think from a stack perspective, if you think about all of the things that Cisco makes and sells, they make everything that you need to build and operate a large enterprise network. Then you add in the VPN, which is the entry point into the network, which became extremely important during things like the crisis in Ukraine, where we need to do geo-blocking and understand where a person's coming from, observability with things like Thousand Eyes, MFA with Duo, collaboration with WebEx, application performance monitoring with AppD, and you kind of have, and then Splunk is the best data collection platform on the market. And so historically, the problem for running a large network like this has always been getting enough telemetry that you can corroborate activities and understand what's happening in the environment, which is why people put taps all over the place, which I don't really have to do because I'm actually using Cisco products that pass that data around. But if you take all of that together plus Splunk, you basically have everything that you need to build an end-to-end SOC, which is a great competitive advantage for me. And the value of the platform, if I take a complex problem like hybrid work, where you're solving observability across networks that I don't own or operate, the last mile into the home, security, application level performance monitoring. What is the performance of the public internet and large SaaS platforms? And I can take advantage of the whole Cisco platform for that. That solves a big chunk of a complex problem that I don't have to tackle. So yeah, it is a Cisco stack, but I'm fortunate to work somewhere where you're proud of the products. It's the products are the soul of a company, and it's part of why I came to Cisco. Was I believe that Cisco is an important company that makes important products. And what we do matters. And you don't want to be embarrassed by the products that your company makes. And I think Cisco has really good technology.
So I have a couple of directions I want to go off of that, because I'm just dying to know, do you have a converged knock and sock operation inside Cisco?
We do. I mean, there is a sort of tier one function that handles the kind of 90% of pedestrian internet drive-by shootings, and then there's but as you would expect, Cisco attracts a lot of very sophisticated adversaries, and as an industry statement, not a Cisco statement, I would say the trend line continues of advantage going to adversary, not good actors. And so really understanding our environment, the systems and the networks that underlie those systems, and the trust boundaries of things that really need to be shored up better than the adversaries who are trying to break in, is really, really critical. And that's something that we spend a lot of time on.
Sure. Makes total sense. And the logic of convergence, at least up to a certain level, has always made a lot of sense to us here. We're still seeing relatively low uptake on it outside in industry generally.
It's part of that whole observability integrated platform, right? Can I understand as quickly as possible what is happening in the environment, what threats are coming in or knocking on the front door? Is anything moving laterally, and how do I stop it quickly? It's the needle in the haystack problem. And usually when you go back and do the diagnostics on how something bad happened, the signal was there. You just didn't find it in time. And so this kind of real-time understanding of the environment is something that a platform like Splunk really helps us with, but AI is really helping us with as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes total sense. And that the other question I had coming out of that discussion of the stack is, how vanilla is the version of Cisco stuff that you run internally? Because you said, that you're customer zero, which suggests that you're in there at the feature development and definition stage. But then we know, Cisco products evolve a lot as they encounter more customers. Do you, tend to be sticking with a branch of the development line that is just for you guys internally? Are you always riding with the generic thing anybody off the street could buy once that's out there?
Yeah, it's a mix of all of the above. We have certain rings that are on very early alpha builds of things, but you wouldn't necessarily want your production environment in something like that. So there's lab environments, there's engineering teams that are building embedded software for hardware for routers and switches and things like that, and they have a slightly unique environment. I'd say broadly across the Cisco population, when it's something like, let's say, Cisco WebEx. We're generally using, for most people, the most currently available, generally available public build. And then there's a sort of early adopter ring, and then there's like a sales ring, which has all the features enabled so that they can demo it. And it's similar in other domains as well. It's not always the case that everything that I ask for gets prioritized. If you're a paying customer and you have a multi-million-dollar purchase order standing behind the feature that you want, that sometimes actually gets done more quickly than something that we might want in the IT department. But those are very good conversations to have. If we're really the only person in the world that needs this, why is that? Maybe we need to take another look at it and conform to the way other people are doing it, or maybe it really is a gap.
And maybe your customers really need to be thinking about doing things that way. And that's kind of interesting. I guess as you're talking about the whole process, I'm wondering what the feedback process is, as if you're doing some of those very, very early alpha versions of things. Do you have kind of a standard way that you provide feedback to the development teams, or is it just ad hoc? Hey, by the way, we noticed this, or, is there sort of structure, or is it more organic, or is it a mix?
For the product teams in Cisco that are building products that we sell, there's a more formal process where we're engaged and we're having feature presentations and stand-ups and feedback rituals and all kinds of things and generating requirements for them. For the population at large, the greater Cisco, as I said, the mission of Cisco IT is to enable everybody at Cisco to do the best work of their lives and to reduce or eliminate friction in the environment as much as possible. And to do that with a strategy of leading with the experience. So one of the things that we've done is develop an employee friction index, which is a balanced scorecard of a number of different inputs, including inline surveys, observing people trying to complete a task, employee satisfaction, maybe NPS, depending on the thing. But the idea is that if you're responsible for an application, it doesn't matter how bad it is the day that you got it. For the time that it's under your care and feeding, it needs to improve. And in this case, improvement is defined as a reduction of task friction. And so we've gone out and sort of cataloged the top 150 things that people do, whether it's onboarding, filing expense reports, time off, getting applications you need, etc., and gone through that exercise of understanding what the experience really is, and that helps prioritize our backlog of how often do people experience this, how many people experience it, and how important is this experience. If it's a thing you do once in your career at Cisco, maybe it can wait. If it's a thing everybody soldiers through every day, that's going to score very highly in that weighting algorithm for prioritizing our backlog. So I actually act as the product owner against the experience team's backlog and go through it with them and prioritize it based on some of those criteria.
Interesting. So one of the things you said earlier kind of inspires me a little bit, because it sounds like you guys in IT are developing apps for Cisco users and developing solutions for Cisco users. What's your favorite thing that you've developed or discovered or presented to your user community, your internal user community?
It's a hard question to answer. I love all of my children equally. But I would say that one of the things I'm definitely partial to and is a lot of fun. When I first joined Cisco, I was onboarding and they said, "Would you like us to send you a CVO?" And I said, "What is a CVO?" And they said, "It's a Cisco virtual office. And basically what it does is extend the corporate network into your home." And I said, "Yeah, that sounds great." What arrived was a Cisco router in a box with 3 pages of single space typed, very complicated instructions that had things in there like, get SSH into it, get console on it, make sure you don't connect to Ethernet 000. It's got to be Ethernet 001.
Oh, I'm sure that's going to work super well for your top sales producer who just got it.
Yeah. And I thought to myself, well, you definitely know you've joined a networking company. So in that way, it's kind of cool. But this seems like a pretty tall order to ask everyone at the company to get through. And then I thought, well, if I have the privilege of being the CIO of Cisco and I can just go browsing through the entire Cisco portfolio and say, what are the things that I think would really solve hybrid work in a best-in-class way? And then create a highly designed experience around it and send that to people, that would be something really differentiated and one of those moments where you can delight people on the intake instead of leave them concerned. And so we did that. We spent a fair amount of time and energy on creating this great experience for both new hires and people that are due for a refreshed laptop. And it's sort of like a layer cake of these trays and a nicely designed box. And when you open it up, it gives you a little bit of history about Cisco. There's your laptop in there. There's your badge if you're a new hire. There's a keyboard and a mouse or a trackpad. There's some Cisco Meraki gear, a firewall, a wireless access point, a cellular gateway if you have bad internet connectivity, and a WebEx device for collaboration. and then some automation around it where we kind of act like a service provider. So these things are pre-provisioned before they arrive at someone's house. So the instructions really are just kind of turn it on and plug it in, unless you want to opt out of us managing it for you. But the net result of that is that you and everyone and everything in your home is under this shield of protective hardware, software, and services that the most sophisticated governments and companies in the world are using. And it makes people more familiar with what we actually do at Cisco and what our products are. But that, I think, to me has been, we've deployed over 7,000 of those so far, and people really love it. They say,
I was
wow.
going to ask, yeah. As you're describing it, I'm going, gosh, that would be great. I mean, and I have a silly question, but what color is it? Is it like all color coordinated? No, seriously, it matters.
Network color.
The
is
box,
it teal?
The trays themselves are corrugated cardboard. The whole thing is very recyclable, environmentally friendly, and we put work into making as little material as possible, and all of it can be reused. But it's wrapped with these sleeves that are the Cisco blue with the white lettering, and each tray sort of says what it is, right? Like, this is the Connect tray, this is the Collaborate tray, this is the Create tray, which is your laptop. But that has really done a lot to, because if you think about pre-pandemic versus post-pandemic, we essentially went from having, somewhere less than 100 offices to having 90,000 offices.
Right.
And so there's mutual benefit to up-level those. What does it take to turn your home into a secure branch office, and also reduce the anxiety level that you're going to somehow have a connectivity problem during the day. And we can very often detect issues before a user would even know something is brewing. Hey, we noticed that there's high packet loss here. Is there any way that you could move closer to the wireless access point? Or we see that your ISP has a circuit that's flapping, or, we see you're having a bad experience on this SaaS tool or something like that. But observability across the last mile and networks that we don't manage is a big capability. And you have to be a little careful about cause and effect. But in large numbers, compared to whatever people had going on in their homes before we sent these kits out, we can demonstrate statistically significant, better, faster DNS lookup times, less jitter, less packet loss. Just end to end, your whole day is a higher performance environment.
Panoptica, Cisco's cloud application security solution, provides end-to-end lifecycle protection for cloud-native application environments. It empowers organizations to safeguard their APIs, serverless functions, containers, and Kubernetes environments. Panoptica ensures comprehensive cloud security, compliance, and monitoring at scale, offering deep visibility, contextual risk assessments, and actionable remediation insights for all your cloud assets. Powered by graph-based technology, Panoptica's attack path engine prioritizes and offers dynamic remediation for vulnerable attack vectors, helping security teams quickly identify and remediate potential risks across cloud infrastructures. Panoptica utilizes advanced attack path analysis, root cause analysis, and dynamic remediation techniques to reveal potential risks from an attacker's viewpoint. Visit panoptica.app to learn more.
That is a great story. I'm glad I asked. And there's another one that I know, John, I don't know if you're looking to ask, but you had mentioned. Oh, yeah.
Is this about the AI proof of concept?
Yes, actually. So that's another thing that you're working on. So, John?
Yeah, no, I heard that you guys have taken in board a whole bunch of NVIDIA stuff and are, of course, going the Ethernet rather than InfiniBand route. What brought this on, and how's it going?
Yeah, so that's true. We did build the first internal AI cluster within Cisco using 256 NVIDIA H100 GPUs. And,
right? John's making faces right now like, whoa.
Those chips arrived by armored car, by the way, because the street value of them was in the millions. And we used Cisco optics and Ethernet fabric really to build out the blueprint, both for ourselves and for customers who might want to do the same thing and say, can you build a high performance AI cluster using Ethernet instead of InfiniBand? And we were able to do that and prove using RDMA, random direct memory access, that there's no packet loss between the cluster. We did that at 400 gig. We're now in the process of building an even larger cluster at 800 gig. But it's running real workloads, and the purpose of that cluster is several-fold. We want to give our developers and the people who build products an environment where they can have hands-on experience on how to configure the products to work properly, whether it's Sonic or if you're a hyperscaler, maybe you want to do Sonic. If you're a corporate or campus environment, probably not. But all of those things need the blueprints, the runbooks created, and then to give our own IT team experience doing this, because there's going to be more and more need for this. And then we do believe that there's going to be an increased demand for on-prem AI clusters, whether you're a university and you want to teach classes in it and teach people how to do this, or you're a government or you're a corporate entity and there's something so sensitive that you maybe don't want it out on the public cloud. And so there's going to be increased demand for this kind of infrastructure, which creates its own interesting set of challenges. Historically, when we would build a data center somewhere, we might plan for 5 kilowatts per rack. An AI cluster, we're now planning 60 plus kilowatts of power per rack. And so the problem set for where to host this stuff moved from rack space to power density and all kinds of other interesting things. But anyway, yes, we did successfully build an internal AI cluster using Cisco Ethernet fabric. And once the armed guards left us with the NVIDIA GPUs, I've put in a request if there's any extra one left over for my home gaming PC, although I'm not
they
sure.
were like, yeah, no. Well, and it's interesting, too, when you talk about the increased demand for in-house. John and I are just wrapping up a research study because we do primary research here at Nemertes. And one of the things we found was that there's a deep-seated contradiction between what is actually happening and what people think is happening, particularly at large enterprises. And here's what it is. Large enterprises, about 60% of their workloads, about 62% of their workloads are still in-house in data centers, but they are predicting confidently that will fall off dramatically over the next 3 years to down under 20%. Yet at the same time, if you ask them, where are you hosting, where are you developing and training your AI models, they all say internally. Most in the data center, also some on edge. So I'm looking at this going, wait, guys, these can't both be correct, right? Given the amount of computing horsepower that AI demands, if you're simultaneously moving everything else to the cloud, but bringing AI in, you're still going to have honking big data centers with, as you pointed out, very different power requirements. And I don't think the majority of large enterprises have gotten their heads around that yet.
I think it's going to be very, very interesting and very transformative of what the infrastructure of the future looks like. I think we went through a phase of cloud is the answer, what was the question? Mm-hmm. And cloud first, local if I have to. And there's a whole subset of things cropping up where you're going to say, actually, my preference is local first, cloud if I have to. And that is going to shift a lot of dynamics in an interesting way, including how companies monetize things. If you've got an AI engine somewhere, maybe it's embedded on a piece of hardware, and then all of a sudden, how much memory is on that device becomes really important. Who do you pay to get your information through the AI router so that it comes out at the endpoint that you want? All sorts of interesting things are going to happen here. But I do agree with you. We see the same thing, which is a lot of large enterprises, a lot of governments, and a lot of educational institutions have legitimate wants and needs for on-prem AI infrastructure.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, as you said, it conflicts directly with a cloud-first strategy, which is what most organizations currently have. So it'll be fun to see how this plays out.
And I would also say there is a certain tipping point of scale where if you're big enough, if something is not really cloud native or taking advantage of the cloud control plane, you may be able to just run it cheaper yourself in-house.
Oh, you almost certainly will. John and
Definitely.
I did research.
We've shown it again and again.
Yeah, we did some research a couple of years ago where basically if you do it wrong, you're paying up to a 20 to 40% premium running something. The problem is most organizations do it wrong. Companies that do it well can actually reduce their costs in cloud, but the real benefit to cloud is speed to turn up. So if you've got like, thousands of researchers or people doing something, and you don't want to have to funnel all of those people through central IT, it's easier to just say, yeah, go spin it up on the cloud and call us when you're ready to go into production.
Yeah. Or maybe you say, my definition of cloud is, can I provision resources without ever having to talk to somebody? And that's something that you could achieve internally as well as externally. And there's this other sort of interesting financial, well, it's not interesting by definition because it's financial dynamic. But you could always sort of assume a 3 to 5% efficiency on things that you were running yourself. And as more and more things moved to cloud and SaaS, a greater and greater portion of your IT budget became an immovable fixed object.
Yep.
So if you get a target on the whole denominator of your budget, and there's only a small amount of it that's actually variable, you end up squeezing the only part that you can vary, which tends to often be the labor. And so that's forcing some hard looks at some of these things where the costs have just grown as consumption increased. It's a great business model. The internet grows, the cloud consumption grows. But do I really need it to be there? Am I taking advantage of some of those features and things of the public cloud, whether it's multiple availability zones or the ability to spin up instances or what have you? And then the other thing is, I think we need to be very deliberate and thoughtful about how we take advantage of cloud. It's certainly a big part of the strategy, but if you're not careful, you can end up in these big proprietary stacks of the 90s where the cloud providers become the new integrators of this stuff. And it's the least consumer friendly way, where you get sort of locked in somewhere and you didn't even realize it along the way that I'm using all this proprietary features and services that maybe were more designed for consumers. That's the other thing. Are their business models compatible with your companies?
Mm-hmm.
Well, and the other thing to look at, and I really urge my clients to look at this a lot, is you really get locked into a model where the innovation slows to a trickle. Because when the cloud providers are all competing with each other, they're trying to race and out-innovate each other. Once they've got you more or less locked in, then there's no benefit to them to innovate, because innovation basically is a reduction in reliability in very simple terms. Anything new, anything you change has a non-zero probability of hurting something somewhere. And even if that probability is super small, it's still non-zero. So just keep everything the same, keep your customers the same, slow them to a trickle. And that becomes the problem with what you mentioned earlier, which is if the only knob you can twiddle is labor, and you start cutting out your internal IT, then you're screwed, because you can't actually innovate. You have nobody to innovate with.
It's exactly that reason why I don't like to have a separate enterprise architecture team. IT architecture is okay. Enterprise architecture, not for me. And I don't like to have a separate innovation team, because good ideas in innovation can come from anywhere, including a 40-year-old application. I don't currently have any mainframe, but you can innovate just as well on a brand new native mobile app as well as you can on some very old legacy ERP platform. And when you're trying to drive operational efficiency and excellence, you want to take variability out of the system. When you're trying to drive innovation, you want to do the exact opposite and inject variability into the system. And so the balance of those two things, where I need a stable environment, but I got to drive innovation, is sort of part of the acrobatics that IT has to pull off.
Yeah, and I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges in strategy overall, because I think every company I talk to will at least pay lip service to wanting to be innovators. Mm-hmm. And then, but if you forced them to choose, you can't innovate if the trains aren't running on time. And so that becomes a problem. And you have to have an answer that says, yes, we will accept a certain amount of chaos that comes from innovation. And at the same time, we will meet our goals. As you said earlier, do what you said you were going to do when you said you were going to do it.
Yeah. I think, on that point, it's very easy when you're the CIO to get distracted by sort of shiny object, high profile projects. Mm-hmm. But there's these whole sort of quality of life issues that if you don't pay attention to them, it generates the perception that the whole function is poorly run. So, you don't want to end up in a situation where people go, you can't even get my laptop right. Why would I let you do this other thing for me? And so anything that touches all employees, we spend a lot of time making sure that is as good as an experience as we know how. And a great force multiplier for doing that is when I go and talk to people and I say, who in our industry does this better than we do? You should know the answer to that question. If you don't, you're not plugged into the industry enough. And one of the benefits of working at a place like Cisco is that opens a lot of doors. There's 8 billion people in the world. Somebody somewhere has solved this. Let's leave our ego at the door and go and listen and learn from them and figure out what best practices we can bring back into our environment. And that has really been a great way for us to get progress quickly. IT is a great industry. It's generally great people who are interested in seeing their colleagues succeed, and sharing best practices is not proprietary trade secrets of the company. And so you can have these kind of conversations and really benefit from it.
Well, and you hit on something that I really wanted to kind of wrap up with, which is one of the things that we do here at Heavy Strategy is try to ask the right questions. So instead of being prescriptive with the answers, we try to tell people what questions to ask. And one of your favorite questions is, who out there does this better than we do? What are some other questions that you encourage your team to ask and want them to ask?
Well, one of the core tenets of Agile is, how do we get better? And so making that a real institutionalized practice of doing the diagnostics of what went well, what didn't go so well, and how do we improve is a really important part of every cycle, whether it's a meeting or a release schedule or a CI/CD pipeline or whatever it is. We had an issue this morning, and not to punish but to learn.
Mm-hmm.
What can we learn from this so that next time we're in a better position? I think that's probably the most important question, is not who caused this, but how do we handle this better next time?
Right.
And if you have a culture where people are not afraid, what slows everything down is when you get all this checking up and down the line. So when you're sort of building out the team, like I said at the beginning, your culture is really the only unique thing that you have. I'm looking to hire people who are kind, passionate about their craft, and believe in our purpose as a company. And when we surround ourselves with those kinds of teammates, we'll be successful in whatever problem we happen to be trying to solve. So I think, how do we always improve? Who does this better than we do? One of the great questions to ask is, what did I not ask?
Mm-hmm.
Very often the person you're talking to is thinking something, but they're not going to tell you unless you give them that window and that space to say that.
Taking something from exactly that, what did we not ask here on this interview that we could have asked?
Well, I mean, I think you both have been very thorough and asked mostly everything. The only thing I would say is that one of the deficiencies of the Agile Manifesto is that it really doesn't treat design or experience in any specific way. It's just a skill that someone on the team has to do. And so when I say we lead with the experience, I don't mean that after we build something, we have a graphic designer look at it and put a new coat of paint on it. I mean that we take the time to sometimes go a little bit slower up front so that we can go much faster forward to really understand what problem we're trying to solve. Complicated is easy, simple is hard. So that means this full stack of skills around research, analytics, content, UI, UX, visual design, and then embedding those teams persistently into whatever Scrum teams happen to be working on something. So in general, I'm organized by platforms, right? So like I've got, my Oracle platform team is somewhere. The only thing I keep centralized is the design and experience team, because that's a scarce resource. And so, I guess I could hire 1,000 designers and sprinkle them out, but we already have that experiment where everything looks different and it's uneven at best. So if you were to ask me, what has been the single most important thing in simplifying IT, having a strategic relationship with the business, creating an environment where people perceive that the quality of IT is a daily reflection of what the company thinks and feels about its people, it would be the creation of this design and experience team and embedding that into the mindset and into the ways of working.
Which I think is a great finale and sum up. I know that Steve Jobs sort of memorably said, the future doesn't belong to the artists or the engineers. It belongs to the people who do both. And that really is what you were saying.
Today's best user experience is tomorrow's minimum expectation.
Yep.
Right.
Okay, well, Fletcher, thanks again for being here with John and me. It was great having you. I know our listeners will want to hear more from you. Where can they do that? Where can they reach you?
They can find me on LinkedIn. And also, if you're interested in going to Cisco Live, Cisco's big trade show. The next one in Europe is in Amsterdam in February.
And you
I'll
speak
be
at
both.
those. You speak
I
at
do.
those. Do you meet with customers there as well? And so can somebody just sign up to say, hey, I want to touch base with you?
Yeah. I'll be giving talks at both, and I'll be there. And if anybody wants to meet me, I'll look forward to meeting you there.
Sounds great. Well, thank you both. Very much appreciate it.